Edible Blooms came about because all good businesses solve a problem. The creation of the concept was around smashing together two things I loved, which is great food and flowers. If you don't know something's going to be hard or risky, you just do it and then you work it out later and you kind of make it work. Would I prefer to give it a go and fail, or would I like to turn 60 and have regrets and look back and say, what if I had have tried this? If you're the entrepreneur, when you're in any organisation, just say yes to everything. Put your hand up, work hard for someone else, because you'll learn more and be given a lot of opportunities. I think anyone that thinks going online is going to be easy needs to do some research. Women are not getting enough funding in businesses, and it's actually quite a problem to solve. You win or you learn. As long as you take away your learnings to win the next time, you've won.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Creating Synergy podcast. In today's episode, we're thrilled to have Kelly Jamieson, the innovative CEO of Edible Blooms, joining us for a fun and insightful conversation. Edible Blooms is the answer of sending a bouquet of flowers that we didn't realize we needed, and it has grown into an international phenomenon because of it. Instead of sending flowers, you can send a beautifully assorted chocolate arrangement that looks like a flower bouquet. And let me tell you, friends, my wife isn't a flower person, so this has gotten me out of a whole lot of trouble over the years. So for this, thank you, Kelly. I thank you very much. Our conversation today, we explore the world of entrepreneurship, uncover the secrets behind Kelly's success in business, and how she broke the mold and turned her passion into a thriving business. We discuss some other hot topics such as diversity and female empowerment in the business world. From the inception of Edible Blooms to the future of the brand, Kelly shares her journey, the importance of hustle, and her perspective on starting a business. We discuss the challenges that come with being a female founder and emphasize the point for more support for women in starting their business in Australia. With a perfect blend of practical advice and personal stories, this episode is sure to ignite your entrepreneurial spirit. So without further ado, here is my chat with Kelly Jamieson. Welcome back to the Creating Synergy podcast. Today we've got the amazing Kelly Jamieson on the show. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Daniel.
It was about... I reckon it was about maybe 3 or 4 months ago on LinkedIn. I posted I wrote a post asking the world of the internet to provide some names of some great female leaders. I feel like I'm keen to increase the female leadership on this podcast, and in that post, I reckon your name got mentioned about 15 times.
Well, that's very kind of.
So
obviously, have some nice friends out there that are on the payroll.
So thank you for joining us. You are the founder and managing director of Edible Blooms, which is a phenomenon of a business here in Australia and worldwide. A couple of accolades: 2022 CanStar #1 online gift delivery company in Australia. You're a Telstra Business of the Year for Australia and SA Businesswoman of the Year. So kudos.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been 18 years in the running. An overnight success story, you could call it.
100%. That's what they say. It takes 18 years to become an overnight success.
Yeah, it does.
So I wouldn't mind starting back, before we get into the world of Edible Blooms, wouldn't mind just sort of casting our eye back to your early days, your childhood days. Is there anything about your childhood that you look back on or have ever reflected on and think, this is kind of where it sort of set me off in the world of entrepreneurship and starting your own business?
Great question. I actually grew up in country South Australia. So my family have been generational farmers in the lower mid-north. And so I grew up in a country town called Balaclava, and my mum's family were farmers, my dad's family were farmers. I felt like I was related to half of the town growing up. And actually, as a community, they've been incredibly supportive of my sister and I as we've gone into business, which is also great. I love that about communities. They really get behind you. So growing up in a country town, I think you're just really hands-on. Everybody pitches in, when the schools need air conditioning, all the dads go in on the weekend and install the air conditioning and, and there's fundraisers, things like that. So I think growing up, I sort of have that country community spirit where you just, if there's a problem, you solve it and you get things done. So my sister and I, the property that we grew up on was a good 20-minute drive into town, and it was literally dirt roads for 20 minutes everywhere around us. And we really wanted to earn some pocket money. We were quite wanting to have our own funds.
Yeah.
And our mother was a school teacher, so she was very good at, getting us on our way. So we couldn't sort of have a job at the bakery after school or something like that. So she came up with the idea that because we loved cooking, and so from an early age we used to enter into the country show, the cooking competitions, and that's how we'd have our pocket money to go on rides and things each year. And so we loved cooking, and the local bakery needed someone to bake Melting Moment biscuits.
Okay.
So that was our first little foray into business, my sister and I. So we would bake as a little side hustle our Melting Moment biscuits. So I literally can make them like the pictures.
Yeah, wow. So their recipe,
Yeah, I don't know. Actually, I don't know how that came about. I'd have to ask my mum. But mum would buy the ingredients. When we got paid, we had to pay her back for the cost of the ingredients. So we kind of learnt that lesson
There's a
of
supply
cost.
chain going on here.
Yeah, exactly. And, she got her kitchen all food approved and all that sort of thing, so we could do that at home. And so I guess that was our first business together.
That's amazing.
So my sister and I run Edible Blooms together now as well.
Yeah. How long did you do the biscuits for? Like, was that
a good few years.
Yeah, wow.
And but then we both were lucky enough to be, our parents gave us the opportunity to go to boarding school from when we were 12. So when we were in year 8. So we actually did in the weekends and holidays we'd bake as well. But that was a late primary school foray that we started baking biscuits. So pretty young when we started.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you still make them?
I can. I don't.
No.
My mum still does actually.
Oh, really?
Yes. She's and funnily enough, our maiden name was Baker. So
there you go.
quite serendipitous.
That's the way it normally works, isn't it? Like Smith was from a blacksmith.
That's right. Yeah. So it carried on.
Brilliant. So you said boarding school. Were you a good student? Were you?
Yeah. Look, I was pretty academic,
Yeah.
so I think that's one of the reasons. My parents certainly had to work really hard to give us that opportunity. It wasn't just they weren't the kind of parents that they didn't have to think about, what that would cost them. So, but I was quite an academic student. I think they wanted to give us a really good opportunity to see a bigger world.
Mm-hmm.
So, so we started in year 8, which was pretty
here
young.
in Adelaide?
In Adelaide, a girls' boarding school.
Okay.
So, so that was great. And I still have amazing friends, like the friends that you make through that experience of boarding when you're from a young
living
age.
with people.
Yeah. So I still have an amazing group of friends from that time in my life, which is great.
Very good. Looking back, growing up on a farm, dirt roads, baking melting moments. Is there a memory that sticks in your head more so than anything else that just makes you smile?
Oh gosh, that's a good one. A really bizarre thing about farmers is they all seem to have boats. You're inland, you're in the middle. Like I said, we've got 20 minutes of dirt roads all around us. But my dad and his brother were quite keen water skiers, and so from a really early age we were really into water skiing.
Yeah.
And so our closest beach was Port Param, which if you've ever been there, it's a great beach for crabbing, and it's loads of seaweed on the beach. But for about 1 kilometre, the water's quite shallow, so it was great for water skiing. So we would have summer nights where you'd go down and have a water ski and, barbecue on the beach or, head home. So it was really fun. And Port Vincent was the other spot we'd have our summer holidays, which was great.
That's amazing. So what happened from there? Where did you go? So you finished school. What happens to your life at this point? Yeah,
it's interesting actually because I sort of thought I'd end up at university. I didn't really know what I wanted to do when I was at school. So I think that's one of the things I say to a lot of, nieces and nephews who, not sure what they want to do. You don't have to know when you're at school. It sort of works out. And so
it's a bit unfair to say that you got to pick the rest of your life when you're 16.
Some people do. And I sort of look at them and think, wow, that's amazing. But I didn't know. I ended up doing a business degree, but it's a bit of just a very brief overview of it. So from year 12, my accounting teacher, and I had a really interesting mix of interests. Like I had a very creative brain and a analytical brain. So I did this really mix of like creative subjects like art, but also economics and accounting and the serious math stream and whatever. Yeah. So it was like a really strange mix because I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I just did the subjects I liked. Mm-hmm. So I ended up getting into my business degree, but my accounting teacher had put me forward for she said, the Real Estate Institute, his daughters had been at the same school that I was at and they were looking for someone to be their receptionist. She said, Kelly, just go along for the practice of the interview. So I turned up at the end of year 12 for a practice at a job interview, and they offered me the job at the spot. And honestly, I don't know why they did. They must have been so desperate, because I remember I turned up for the interview and I'd forgotten to write down the name of the person I was supposed to ask for. So I was just so green. Anyhow, they offered me the job, and so I took a summer job there as their receptionist after year 12. And then when university results came out, the CEO at the time said to me, "You've got until the end of today to decide if you want to study part-time and we'll sponsor you to study, or you leave us in a few weeks and you go to university and that's it." And like literally, I didn't have my parents to ask the question of. It was a really suddenly, like, that was a quick growing up moment.
Yeah.
And so
there's no mobile phones that you can just get on the phone and
very different world back then. Oh gosh, I only learned how to turn a computer on, I think, when I started working. And so I decided that I would. I quite liked working, so I decided that I'd try it for a year. I'd study part-time and work full-time. So that sort of started me on a course where from 17 I had a full-time job, and I studied part-time my university degree from then on. Yeah. So that was kind of a really different, and back then that was not a normal thing, whereas now it kind of
Someone
is.
paying your education.
I never had to pay for I never had a HECS debt, which was amazing.
Did you finish?
Yeah, I did.
You stayed there and saw it through?
I ended up doing a double degree. I actually changed jobs in the time, and my next work did the same thing.
Oh, how good is that?
Yeah, I know, it was really good. And so when I was 21, I then left with 3 of my best girlfriends from boarding school, and we went on those working holidays to the UK. Mm-hmm. So we went for a couple of years over there, and I hadn't finished my degree at the time, but I took a little bit of a break, and I worked in magazines in London in marketing, which was really amazing. So Time Out magazine, TNT magazine, which was the Aussie one over there. So I had a really good time and great opportunities because I had work experience at that age already and I was studying. So, and then I returned to Adelaide after that and decided something different. Got into professional services. Ended up working at a top tier legal firm, doing their marketing and business development, so a lot of tender writing and things like that. Finished my degree, started my MBA in my mid-20s, which again back then wasn't as popular as it is now.
No. So double degree and then decide you're going to just throw an MBA into the mix as well.
Yeah, and I thought if I don't keep going, if I take a break, I will not keep going. So I actually literally went back to back. Yeah. And then I think I'd done the grad certificate of that, and then I started Edible Blooms. So literally it was like I'm a hard worker. So I worked and studied. I was studying full time at certain points, but it was actually, I would always say to business subject students that when you're working in the field and studying, the study's really easy because you can apply it. Yeah, it's not like you're trying to, in your mind, work out how these, all this theory works. You can actually see it, and you can also see how some of it's not really relevant as well. So you kind of know the bits that you really want to delve into. So, study became easy for me because of the path that I took. It was never hard. Yeah.
So casting your mind back into the magazine world, what did you learn over there? It's a different world, obviously, over in the UK. Was there anything you picked up that you still is still true to this day?
Actually, it was a really interesting time because I was there in 2000, and that was when the .com bubble first came out. So it was a really amazing time to be over in London because it was a really big bubble, and there were people who were just, instant millionaires because they people were valuing these new .com businesses in its incredible way, and they had no revenue. One of the only survivors of that period that from what I remember in London was lastminute.com.
Yeah, okay.
That was a massive success over there. And I was actually part of that. So I'd started working at TNT magazine, and then I managed to get a freelancing role at Time Out magazine, and my role there at the magazine was actually rolling out their .com, so taking timeout.com into the digital space. Yeah, so I was one of the lower marketing minions, but I was part of that kind of movement. And it's really interesting looking back because I was working at Time Out, which is an epic and iconic title in the UK, and it certainly was even bigger then than it is now. It's now global, but the UK, it was just this very cool, and they had all their travel guides for Europe, so it was a really amazing place to work at that point in my life. But we had this whole consultancy. We had a whole floor in our building with Arthur Anderson Consultants, who were their tech consultants, and they were in some kind of partnership with Time Out to roll out Time Out, and we started with the eating and dining guide that we were and the shopping. No, we started with the shopping guide first. The trial was do shopping first, and then the eating and the dining. They were sort of like known as the guide of where to eat out in London. If your restaurant got a good review from Time Out, you were great. Yep. If you got a bad review, close your doors. It's no good.
Yeah.
But the shopping was what we started online first. But even then, with all of those consultants, nobody thought about how we were going to monetize it.
Yeah.
It was just all we were doing was putting content online, and it was going to be amazing. And my role was to create the competitions to get people on the site. So I had to engage with all of our key partners and create great, really interesting campaigns so that we could get people on the site. So thinking about how to get people there, but we hadn't thought about advertising streams, like how it was going to actually make money. And that was kind of normal at that point. It's really bizarre.
Strange,
like you look back and everyone was just like, we've just got to go online.
Yeah.
Like, .com, boom, it's this thing. So
now these days the given is it's going to be online. How do we make money? Whereas back then it's like, how do we get online?
Yeah, it was really interesting. And actually this really fun fact that came across my desk this week, which I'll share, is the internet, the speed of the internet 20 years ago, a carrier pigeon was faster than the internet. So they had a test in the US and they had a carrier pigeon that left, and then someone was using dial-up internet to so the carrier pigeon left with the USB with the same content, and then someone was uploading it on dial-up to send it to somewhere 2 hours away, and the carrier pigeon won.
Oh, wow.
20 years ago, because it just took, remember how it took so long to download content, like it was slow? So
I was the guy that downloaded every song that I could, LimeWire, I remember that?
Yeah.
And it was like a 3 kilobyte song thing or whatever it was, or megabyte song, and it took like half an hour, 45 minutes to download this like little file.
Yeah.
Now you click on it, like Spotify, you click on it and it starts playing.
Yeah, I know, it's amazing. So anyway, times have changed, but that was probably one of my, I guess memories of that time, of having that experience of working overseas at a really young age. And at the time, I probably was really not that analytic. I was just there to have a good time. I was there to travel and whatever. But, subconsciously you're seeing these things going on.
Absolutely. You're picking it up.
Yeah. So interesting that I ended up with an online business, actually.
I know.
So,
that's amazing.
Yeah.
And when would have that been? So you've come back to Australia. You've gone and worked at the legal firm, marketing and development again. Really, again.
So it was only 5 years after that I started my own online business.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like, because the .com booms 2000, your business would have been 2005 or
yeah, we were. Yeah. And
so you're in amongst it at that point.
Yeah, and it was interesting. In 2005, I mean, it was a really different time to be starting an online business than it is now. So I remember doing a business plan for Edible Blooms when it started, and I literally downloaded a template from the government website of how to write a business plan.
Where did the idea come from? Before we go into the business plan, where did the idea come from? Is it from the melting moments idea? Like, is that the connection, or is it just going, I need to figure out, but there's some people that don't like flowers.
I was a really deliberate entrepreneur. Like, I knew from a really young age I wanted to do my own thing. I didn't want to work for someone for the rest of my life. That was just something that I knew. And I think that was probably from growing up in the country. And I had some uncles that started an amazing business value-adding to farming, so I saw what they were doing. So I was really inspired.
So your dad ran his own farm and own business as well? Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I heard this, get my language right, I heard this statistic that you're 90% more likely to start your own business if your parents have their own business.
I would believe that. And I just believe in role modelling full stop. Like, I think it's really important, and particularly leading the path for other young women, is we need to be role models. Like, we need to,
agreed.
I think we had a chat before about women not putting themselves forward for your podcast, whereas men do. Like, men come to you and say, I want to be on your podcast, whereas you have to ask women to be on the podcast. Like,
100%.
different approach.
And I can guarantee I've never been asked by a female to come on.
Yeah. Well,
unless it's a PR agency.
Yeah, I would never ask someone to go on their podcast. I just wouldn't do it.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Anyway, interesting. But I think that as women, we need to be aware of those sorts of differences, and we need to be role models, because I wasn't even aware that people asked.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just one of those things. So
I do.
So I think it's important for any if you want to other people to follow in your footsteps, or you've got a responsibility to be a role model, and that's the same as a parent. Like you've got to open your children's eyes to things.
Yeah, 100%.
And I think the other thing, because actually one of the other things I wanted to do when I left school was to be a stockbroker. I was always fascinated with making money.
It's the Wolf on Wall Street.
Yeah, I know. I didn't want to be him though. Oh my God, that's a crazy movie. I do love it though. I love Margot Robbie. I wanted to be a stockbroker. So my mum, before I in year 12, my mum's school teacher, so very thinks about everything, and she's very organised. I got a placement at Taylor College. She said, well, if you want to be a stockbroker, if you want to go and do an economics degree, you have to do some work experience at a stockbroking firm. I'm not going to let you enroll in a degree and then it's not the right one. Yeah. So I had to write to all of the stockbroking firms and ask for a spot, and Taylor Collison gave me a spot for work, a work experience placement. And so my mum...
Do you remember the days where you used to have to write letters to get work out? It doesn't happen anymore.
And even when you applied for a job, you had written references, Not, you didn't have an email
hilarious.
and a phone number on there.
Takes me back so much.
I know. And you had a letter from your school, a letter of recommendation, all that sort of stuff. Yeah, very different days now. So I went to do the work experience at Taylor Collison, and mum rented a hotel for a week and helped me get to and from in a school holiday week so that I could do this work experience week. And I sat at the end of a trading desk, and it's a funny story because, I was a year 12, very, in awe of being in this really business environment. And I was sat at the end of the desk with a son of one of the owners, and it turned out to be David Pittman. And I heard the guys referring to something about him being playing for Adelaide Football Club, and I only knew of it as being called the Crows. And honestly, we all went to Crows matches all the time. I was sitting there for a couple of days, and I finally worked up the courage to say, is Adelaide Football Club the same as the Crows?
Oh, no.
And he said, yes, it was. And I don't think I could talk to him for the rest of the time I was there, because when I worked out I was sitting next to a Crows player the whole week. I was like,
that's hilarious.
So shy. Anyway,
he's a good ruckman.
Yeah, he was a very good player. And
Sean Wren and Pittman.
They were great. Those players.
I'm not a Crows supporter, but that was a good duo.
And Tony Modra.
Oh, Mods is.
Yeah, well, he's been my son's footy coach because he lives down at Victor with us. So his son and Jack have been in the same footy team.
I don't know any South Australian that doesn't take a good mark and scream out Modra.
He's a great guy, and he gives a lot back to the community now in footy, which is awesome. So. So it's funny how, suddenly those players, it was sort of, I was so shy, so shy.
It's hilarious.
But I did decide from that week that I thought stockbroking wasn't for me. And actually, overwhelmingly, because the trading desk was all men.
Yeah, okay.
The only females in the office were actually the administration and the support staff. There was not a woman around the table.
It's a pretty aggressive market. Like, is that I'm thinking of, when they're all...
Oh, no, so they were at computers then. They weren't on the floor. That was earlier, but no, all on computers. But it was still very a male-dominated field.
Yeah, okay.
And really what I should have said is, here's an opportunity to change that, whereas it seemed too much as a Year 12 student, if that makes sense.
16, 17 years old. I mean,
and again, that's a role modelling thing, isn't it?
Well,
because unless there's a female there, it's harder to be the first one to break through.
Times have changed a lot.
Yeah.
Though. Like, I think now you would get 16 and 17-year-olds challenging the status quo.
I think so too.
Because you have their parents that do it.
Yeah.
Right? So,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but back then it was fall in line, right?
And also I think there's more awareness that if you are one of the few women, you're going to have other women wanting to invest with you. You've got a point of difference. So, there's I think you can see a difference now, whether it's culture or, ethnicity or whatever it is, it can be a real advantage. You can use that 100%. And play on it and make it work for you.
Without doubt.
Yeah.
Because diversity is highly sought after these days.
Very much so, yeah.
Yeah, back in the day, it was, growing up, it was speak only if you're spoken to, right? So you just fall in line and do what you're going to do.
Yep.
But I never really liked that model I always challenge the status quo. So Edible Blooms, let's go back there. So you're a deliberate entrepreneur.
Oh, yeah.
And then you said, right, I'm not working for anyone. I went stockbroking, didn't like that. Now where are we? We're at...
I didn't even end up doing stockbroking. It was just work experience. But so really Edible Blooms came about because all good businesses solve a problem. And so first of all, the creation of the concept was around basically smashing together two things I loved, which is great food and flowers. So if those of you who are listening who don't know what an edible bloom is, it's a bouquet that you can eat. So it looks like flowers, but we make it out of chocolates or donuts or fresh fruit. And and it's a beautiful presentation, and they're great for sharing. So I think that's one of the things that has been our point of difference is that they arrive and everyone can share it as a team or as a family. It's a sharing
So
thing.
fun fact, I found out about this many years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I've been with my wife 15 years now. So pretty much around,
Yeah.
my wife does not like flowers.
Ah.
Like doesn't like flowers. She doesn't, I don't know why. She's
Maybe it's an allergy
she's
thing.
a rare breed. Just
Yeah.
not really her thing,
Yeah.
right? But so I needed like something to send.
You need
and
to love bomb
yeah,
her.
so you guys, I think I've got an account with you somewhere.
Great.
That's it's gotten me out of trouble a lot of
Good,
times.
good. But it is nice, and that I think the nice thing is you can send it to your wife, and then she'll share a bit with you. So it's kind of like a
100%.
double win.
Win-win, and then everyone else around. Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. So the idea was born of just going, I want to.
Yeah, it was creative, and I started with fruit bouquets. I was living in Brisbane at the time, and so I did focus groups, but they were very informal focus groups. I'd go to a friend's house for dinner and say I'd bring dessert, and I'd cut in my kitchen pineapples and all sorts of things, and I'd make a bouquet and take it for dessert. And then I would say, well, how much would you pay for this? Would you buy it? That sort of thing. And
Market research.
yeah, very informal. Anyway, I was really just taken with the concept because by that stage in my life, so I was 26 and I'd lived in a couple of different cities of Australia. I'd lived in the UK and I had friends spread out. So there were lots of occasions where I needed to send something and I wasn't there. So, and I think, 10 years earlier, people weren't quite as geographically dispersed.
Yeah.
I think we always sort of grew up in the same town and we stayed there.
You stayed it. You
Whereas-
coloured it within the lines, right?
Yeah, whereas now I think people do have this, they live somewhere for a while, they'll try something else, but more adventurous. And so I love the idea of having a business that could help facilitate that connection piece as well. So my business plan was fairly ambitious at the beginning, and I think naivety carried me a fair amount of the way of what I didn't know was a good thing. If you don't know something's going to be hard or risky, you just do it and then you work it
Yeah.
out later and you kind of make it work.
But that is what they call the entrepreneur spirit, right? Like it is just,
Yeah.
I'm going to give it a crack.
Yeah, I think it's the thing with now younger and younger people going into business. They're being successful because they're not afraid.
No.
Whereas I think when we're older and we have kids and a mortgage, we're sort of very conscious of the responsibilities. So I
Yeah.
think in some ways it is really great to encourage young people to start up because they've got less to lose, and they can put it out there and see what happens.
Look, privilege is obviously at all different levels, but I remember when I first came out and started, the question I asked myself, I got family, 2 kids, same thing, right? The question I asked myself was, what is the worst that can happen? I lose
Yeah.
everything and I move back in with my mum and dad,
Yeah.
and I get a home cooked meal every single night.
Yeah.
There's worse things that can happen. And yes, it's a big hit to your ego, but
Yeah.
it doesn't mean that it's worth the crack then,
Yeah.
right? It's worth having a punt and seeing if you can get it. And
Yeah.
and thankfully it's worked in the right
Yeah.
direction.
But it's also that thing of saying, would I prefer to give it a go and fail, or would I like to turn 60 and have regrets and look
Yeah,
back
correct.
and say, what if I had have tried this? So I think you've got to, and everybody's different. Not everybody's wired to be an entrepreneur either.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people want to be an entrepreneur, but it doesn't mean it's for everybody.
What do you think holds people back? Other than the fear of failure, what holds people? Is it the fear of because one thing I've learned quite evidently is that people don't like selling.
Yeah.
More so
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's the hardest part. Yeah. I haven't done it.
Yeah, because you've just put it online, but effectively marketing is your form of selling, right?
Sorry. I thought you meant as in exiting the business because I think that's the hardest
No,
thing.
sorry,
So
as in
actually
selling, as in the
Yeah, I
physical
agreed.
aspect. I
Yeah.
think that's what people are like, I'm happy to start a business. I just don't want to go out and sell it.
I agree. And that's where I think you've got a great strength because that's something you're really good at. For me, online selling is really easy. But more recently, we've been moving into corporate sales. And so I've had to facilitate introductions,
Yeah.
things like that. And so, and then you realize how easy it is to do it. And you go, why wasn't I doing this before?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I often have that same thing. It's like, it's not that hard. Just pick up the phone and give someone a call. They're like, no, you don't actually realize how hard that is. I'm like,
Yeah, it is actually a hard thing to do. And I agree. I think the biggest thing for people is selling. And that's where I think online has made that a bit more comfortable for people because it's quite scientific when you're selling online. You've got to have, it's back to the marketing 4 Ps, price, place, promotion, all those sorts of things. And you've got to make sure they're right And if you have a great product, it'll sell online, and you have the right follow through and reviews are very important.
Yeah.
So it is interesting. I think the sales piece is, it is probably the hardest bit.
It is difficult.
Yeah.
What did the first 12 months look like? You said you made a lot of mistakes. There was a bit of naivety there. What did it look like? Was it?
It was fun. It was interesting. When I look back, it's probably a few moments where other people might have closed the doors, perhaps. But so when I first started, I was still consulting for a top tier legal firm, and I'd moved from the Adelaide office to the national partnership in Brisbane, and so I was working there consulting 32 hours a week when I started up, and so I had to
a side hustle.
So it was a side hustle, but because I had to have a food safe premise, so I had to learn a lot about food safety from the word go, because we have to have very clean, very well maintained premises. I had to have a commercial lease. It wasn't something I could do from my home, so there was a risk piece I had to sign a lease.
Yeah, wow.
And I had to employ someone straight away, because the way I structured my hours is I worked every day at the law firm, so I would literally wear like an office type dress with an apron over it, and I'd take my high heels off in the morning and put my trainers on, and I'd go in and I'd make everything for the day. And then I hired a driver her name was Kelly.
Yeah.
She was a casual employee, and then she would arrive at our work premise, and then we'd load up all the deliveries for the day. And then I'd be her first delivery. So she'd drop me off at the law firm office in the city.
Yeah.
I'd take my trainers off, put my high heels on, go up and do a few hours of consulting work. So I think I was doing 5 or 6 hours a day.
Yeah.
And then she'd run around and do all the deliveries. And then I was her last pickup. And then she'd drive me back to the office at the end of the day. And that's how I made it work. And then I'd do the admin for the next day. And I had a BlackBerry back then. You remember BlackBerries?
The BlackBerries.
And so I could see orders coming in during the day while I was consulting.
So how many hours were you doing a day?
It was insane.
Yeah.
But I had no kids. I had I was
unattached.
I was a workhorse.
So how did you get to the order? Like, how were people finding out about this?
Oh, that's a great question, actually. So I remember when I government plan, I said I downloaded. So I did the SWOT analysis, and I was like, okay, what don't I know
SWOT,
about this business?
Yeah.
And I knew nothing about accounting. I knew nothing about floristry. I knew nothing about food safety. I knew nothing about traditional retail. And so I was trying to work out if we would be an online or a retail, because at that stage franchises were really big, and Boost had just started, and Boost was doing really well. And so I was watching what they were doing, and
can't sell Boost online though.
No, you can't. No, I was looking at it from a franchise model, because I didn't know if this concept that I'd created was going to be one of those high street, stores, so they'd be around the place, or whether it would be an online business. So I couldn't afford it. Like when I was doing my budget, I couldn't afford to take retail space in the city. It was too expensive.
Yeah, and then fit it out
and have a kitchen. So what we actually did what I did in those days, because Abby joined me soon after I started, but she did her UK holiday. So when I was doing this, my sister was doing her turn in the UK.
Older,
Younger.
Okay,
yeah, she was teaching over there. And so I decided if I can't be near my customers, I'll be near my suppliers. So I took a commercial premise out near the fruit markets in Brisbane. It was a former cafe, so it had all the food fit out that we needed. And so that's how I started it. And then I saw the night before I was about to open the doors, I spent all this time learning about food safety. I did a crash accounting course. I couldn't do a full floristry course, so I actually rang the local floristry school in Brisbane, and I paid for 1-to-1 tuition with the owner of the school. So I only had to do 3 sort of short days, and I knew as much as I probably would have learned doing a whole semester of
But you're not
floristry.
dealing with flowers.
I just wanted to learn floristry techniques, because I
Okay.
was really interested in how I could make this business like flowers.
Yeah,
and
okay.
so she actually was amazing, and she took me to the...
So you're all in. Like, this is amazing the
Yeah.
amount of effort that you've put in. I see people just go, I'll take some photos, chuck it up online, see what happens. But you're all in.
I did all the photos too. They were terrible. So I did this crash course in floristry, but I just wanted to learn techniques and also where they were sourcing supplies from, because some of the supplies we use are similar and things like that. Anyway, and then I had to do food safety. I had to read this inch-thick manual on what food safety meant for Brisbane City Council at the time. And so when I started out, I'd spent so much time learning about the things I didn't know the Sunday night before I was about to open the doors on the Monday, I went, I haven't done any marketing. That's what I do. Like, I'm a marketer. And I hadn't done any marketing at all. So I'd been living in Brisbane for 6 months at that stage, and I had 50 emails of business cards of people that I'd met since that time. So I quickly did one, like a really basic email, literally in Outlook. I had at Edible Blooms email address, which was good. But I emailed to the 50 people I've met, and I said, this is the idea that I've been working on. It's opening tomorrow. And I put, like, I literally cut and paste some of my dodgy photographs of the products on the email. And then I said, this is Edible Blooms. We're opening tomorrow. Everything's half price for the first week. Please share this with your friends. And see, in 2005, people didn't get 200 emails a day. They got 5 or 6.
Yeah.
So people would share things like, oh, this is amazing. Like, it's new, it's novel.
Yeah.
And so it virally got shared. And my first paying customer wasn't even a sympathy order. It was someone who his wife worked at Brisbane TAFE, and he sent her a just because gift, like one of our bouquets. And I remember delivering it because I took a couple of weeks of annual leave from my normal day job, and I delivered it. And I was like, this is someone I don't even know that I'm delivering to on the first day. And that week we did $1,000 in sales at half price. So that was actually a pretty good start. And because it's a visual product, it would arrive in a workplace.
There's no better feeling than watching that first dollar going into the account.
It was very cool, actually. And what I also noticed that first week is that people were calling up the number that I had. And I really made us look bigger than we were. Like, we were a tiny, tiny startup on a shoestring budget. But I had a 1300 phone number. I made sure my email was at Edible, all those simple things. And we had a full transactional e-commerce website from the word go, because that's how I thought people would have to buy. And I was thinking I might have to do some catalogs and things like that, but I hadn't even got around to that. But people were buying from the website. Like, they were literally on that day one ordering online, which was cool. So, but people would call up and it's like an older lady would call and, it's my granddaughter's birthday and I'm just wanting to send, so it was all lovely. Like, people were calling us for lovely reasons. Like, it was about that connection piece and showing care and making someone feel really special. So I've just loved that about the business since day one.
Amazing. Have you still got those business cards? They should be like put in a frame.
I have got some. I haven't got the really early ones, but I've got
you could have had it put all in a frame and just like this is the original email.
Brisbane's a great city, actually. Starting up there, like, it's a very inclusive city. Like, I feel like there's a lot of people. It's because it's awesome weather, right? Like, everyone's happy.
Everyone's in a better mood.
I mean, I have to say, I do love Adelaide. Adelaide's my favourite city in Australia, but Brisbane was awesome and a good place to start. So second location we had was Adelaide, but we opened Adelaide, Sydney and Melbourne in a year. And I spent the first 8 months of that 12 months still consulting.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So
do you know,
I think I worked 24 hours a day and I took multivitamins every day because I couldn't afford to be sick. So it was like, it was go, go, go. Yeah.
That's phenomenal. That's such an amazing story. The work ethic is one thing that we should touch on here. Like, there's a lot of American influencers on the YouTubes and on the TikToks and all the above that are, promoting hustle. And like, I get it. Like, back in those days, it really needed to be hustle. And so there's this tribe almost that goes, no, it doesn't actually need that. There's easier ways to make money and all the above. I still believe that the hustle and the hard work and the amount of study, research, effort, the learning, the addiction to the process is the most important thing.
Look, I probably agree with you, actually. I think you do have to know every part of your business. Like, it's our peak period. We're a very seasonal business. One of the challenges of our business model is that we have Valentine's, Mother's Day, and we have to scale up massively at these peak periods through the year. So it's something we have to be really good at with systems. And, one of the ways we do that is those of us who are, office in, the back end of things in off-peak times, if we suddenly are short of people, like on the phones, like we're on the phones, like you'll get someone in my marketing team.
So you can still order on the phone?
Yeah, you can.
Because you got the
we
shop
have
store.
live chat.
Yeah.
Also, people pop in and buy things. Like it's, we have a lot of people in Adelaide, especially buying. We built our building, our pink building on just off of Anzac Highway 4 years ago. So, which is a cool,
it's good.
Great achievement. Yeah. So
my wife went in there recently. My brother-in-law just got engaged and bought a bouquet with chocolates and beers, was it?
Yeah, we do
You're
those.
getting into the alcohol now? Beautiful.
We do quite a lot of alcohol, actually, yeah.
As you would.
Yeah. Well, it sort of goes with celebration moments.
Well, chocolate and wine, is there a better combo?
Yeah, it totally is. Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. So first 12 months, scaling, things are happening, opening all these stores. Whilst working and consulting elsewhere.
Yeah.
What is life looking like for you at this point?
It was pretty crazy, actually. And I remember when I went to resign, I really didn't have an option because I think I either had to resign or I was probably going to get fired from my day job because I was fairly hectic outside
your brain's
of it.
not in it, is it?
No, it's not. And look, I really loved working for that firm. And I put a lot in, but I know in those last months it was just I was trying to do too much. And I still got lots of friends from that firm. I loved it, and it's a great organisation. I learned a lot, but it was time to go all in. And I remember my accountant at the time said to me, Kelly, you can't afford to go all in because your consulting wage is paying for quite a few people to work in this business.
Yeah, wow.
And so it was a real leap of faith, but I was like, if I don't jump in, how am I ever going to push it along? Do you know what I mean? Like, and it was a really... it was a chicken and egg thing. And in those early days, I remember trying to learn about retail. Retail is a really interesting space and I'd never worked in it before. But I was convinced early on that my sales numbers were dictated by the lunar cycle. Like there was no rhyme or reason why one day we were flat out and the next day I was like, it was crickets, it was just, there was no consistency. And that was the thing I really struggled with, and I think my accountant was concerned about because, there were signs of excellence and it was amazing, but then there were also days where it was not as busy as it needed to be, and so the business needed that extra money to prop it up, which in 2005 there weren't investment was not possible. And I remember in the early days...
not in Australia anyway.
Not in Australia, yeah, but... a bank manager from one of the Westpac branches in Brisbane saw the business, loved it and said, Kelly, I'd love to talk to you about banking. We'd love to work with you. And I said, oh, great. I'd love a loan. I'd love some finance to help me grow the business. And she goes, oh, so have you got a house? And I was like, no, I put my house deposit into the business. And she said, oh, no, we can't help you then.
So there's because there's nothing they can take, right?
No, there wasn't. And the business didn't have 2 years of trading information, that's a minimum to get any. And even then banks like a physical asset. They still do. So, I just had to struggle along and, juggle things around. And, the fact that we were growing quickly helped because I look back and I think it was a pretty crazy period.
How do you decide to go interstate when you can't even where were you living in all this at this point?
We were doing all right.
Were you renting somewhere? Obviously?
Yeah, I was renting. Yeah.
And so,
So that was why it was a big leap of faith. Losing a consulting gig that pays pretty well.
Oh, it's scary. I'm getting the jitters thinking about it. I've done it.
Yeah.
So it is tough.
It is.
But I think what's getting me is the idea of the venturing out. It's like, you're in Brisbane and you've started there and it's going well.
Yeah.
Was the demand coming from the eastern states? Is that kind of why you decided, and then Adelaide as well? Is that?
They all did really well, and it's interesting. We got a lot of publicity at the time, I think someone once said to me, "Oh, you're female, you're young. They want story." Like we found it really easy to get, and this is what I was saying before about if you've got a unique, whether it's any kind of diversity, it's much easier if you're a white male.
Oh.
You're not the paper are not interested in you.
I'm a bold, overweight white guy. Like no one wants anything to do with
it. I'm less the fun story that I used to be, but people love that event. Like they love seeing it, and people want to support. Look, it was. We were fine. It's funny, we have a very strong cash flow in our business. So online businesses are very cash positive generally. And that's really the reason we were able to do it. It was, and that's what I was saying before about, when you're younger and you're risk adverse, you probably don't really think about it that much. And the other thing is that I've always had a really supportive family that I know that if I really hit the straps,
they'd chuck in a few dollars.
I would be able to get some help.
Yeah.
So I'm very lucky, and I think that's something that I'd love to be able to, return as a favour to my own children one day, because I think. But what I also liked is my parents offered to help me initially, and I said no, I want to do this by myself, because I didn't want to do something that I'd been handed.
Yeah.
I wanted to do it myself, but actually then knowing that I had that safety net beneath me, that allowed me to be a bit more risk.
Yeah. 100%.
Like to take some more challenging steps. And I think I'm really pleased that there's now funding opportunities for people who don't have that they can get a business partner and investor. And that's actually relatively easy. If you've got a good track record and you've got a good idea and you've got a proven concept, like you've got your minimum viable product, there's money out there for people. Whereas there wasn't back in the mid 2000s, 2005.
Yeah, there's always investors
Yeah.
looking for things. Yeah,
To
but I
roll
think
the dice.
But that's the same scenario, exactly the same reason why I took the punt was I said I can absolutely, if it all goes to shit, I can just move back in with mum and dad, and
Exactly.
I've got some.
And not everyone has that.
Yeah,
And
I
that's
know.
the thing. Like, you have to be really, and I think the key thing is if you do have that, be grateful for it. And, that's amazing.
Yeah, I'd almost go out on a limb and say you're silly not to take the opportunity.
Yeah.
If you've got that
Yeah.
privilege or whatever it's called, then you have to take the punt. Like, there's an opportunity there for you. And you're
Yeah.
right, you don't want to be at 60 years old looking back going,
What if I tried it?
what if I did something else? Yeah.
And do you know what? Even if you end up failing, what amazing memories and learnings you got along the way. In the meanwhile, you've worked your absolute heart out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wouldn't change it. I think I probably, in hindsight, one of the early learnings I had is that you can't expect your staff to work as hard as you do. Like it's one of those things because it's not there. So that's one of the balances you've got to have, because I think in those early days when it was really a hectic time for the business, some people loved that ride. Other people went, this isn't, and that's fine. But one of the things that we do, which I'm really proud of, is that our first ever full-time employee, which is Sarah, she's our business partner in New Zealand. So we've worked together for 17 years.
Yeah, wow.
So she now runs Auckland, New Zealand, and she's a great business partner. We love working with her. And so, yeah.
There's opportunities when you're
well, if you come in at the early stage of any business.
Mate, I say that to everyone that walks through these doors is we're still young and we're growing, right? Like the opportunity, I think, and I'm like the same as you, is like the world is your oyster. You don't have to be the entrepreneur, but you can be the intrapreneur. Like you can be the one inside the business that is coming up with the ideas and growing this organisation, right?
And you'll learn more. And I've always said that if you're the entrepreneur, when you're in any organisation, and I certainly did this because I knew I wanted to have my own business, if you want to learn stuff, just say yes to everything. Put your hand up, work hard for someone else, because you'll learn more and be given a lot of opportunities, because I know I was early in my career because I was prepared. I didn't expect to get paid overtime.
Yeah.
There was no, I was on a salary. I'm just here.
Yeah.
I know, the more I learn, the better I am. And I have to say I've never asked for a pay rise. Like always just came. So because if you work ahead of the curve, if you're working for more than what you're being paid,
people want to.
You'll be respected for that. Yeah.
Yeah, I always I used this. I had a conversation about sales people the other day, right? And we're looking for a new salesperson and going through all the resumes and whatnot. And one of them that I saw was someone had been made redundant. Their position had been made, like salesperson had been made redundant. And the first thing that went through my mind, and I don't know if this is fair or not, but no good salesperson gets let go, right? Like that's like you might not have been doing enough. You're right. There's always the more that you can do.
Yeah.
And if you're doing that, then you're almost like, why would they ask you to leave? It doesn't make any sense unless the business is falling apart, which I knew this one wasn't. So, yeah, it's just straight. You're right, 100% right. Always do more. And the silver lining is you might not get paid, but you're learning.
Oh, you're investing in yourself.
Correct, and your career progression is on such a high upward curve than than what it would be otherwise.
And that was actually probably one of the catches. I remember my mum was really excited about the idea of edible blooms, but my dad was like, oh, because he's a farmer and, farming's hard. Like it's a hard game to be in. And because, you're putting your crops and you don't know what you're going to get at the end of the year. Like it's a crazy scenario when you think about it.
Yeah.
But, I was, 26 earning $100,000. This is 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Like that's a pretty decent salary in the day. And my dad was like, because he couldn't believe how much I was getting paid.
Yeah.
Like he was like, that's ridiculous.
You're doing what? What are you doing? Well, you're a consultant. No one knows what consultants do.
And and he said, oh, Kelly, I don't know if this is a good idea. And he said, in the end, he said, well, you're not going into debt. The worst thing that'll be is you'll have to get another job when you turn 30. Because he was so,
That's
like, even as
amazing.
a farmer, like I would say farmers are probably one of the biggest, like they're risk takers every year.
Yeah.
But I think because of that, he didn't want me to be one. So so it was quite funny. And but yeah, no, they're very proud and love that.
I worked in a government role, and I've got an Italian background with security as one of the highest values, right? And so they're like, "Why?" When I got the job in government, I remember the comments that came out of my family's mouth, which was, "You're set for life now." Like,
oh, great.
yeah, like
Perfect.
and I'm just like. Then when I left, they're like, "You're doing what?
Yeah.
To start what?" And the idea of consulting, I had no idea what I was doing. But yeah, it was everyone's values are a bit different, right? And they always want what's best. But I think that's one learning lesson that I've taken is that yes, your family love you and they want what's best, but they're also projecting their fears onto you of what could go wrong. So it's about making sure that you've got your ducks in a row.
Exactly.
So where's the business now? You're all around the world. How big is it? What does it look like?
So we have now 6 offices. We've moved those offices many times because we've outgrown multiple. I think most states we've moved at least 4 times in that period because we've just needed
17 years.
Yeah, we've needed more space each time. So I think we vary between a sort of 60 and 80 employees depending on the time of the year. Sometimes it does get up to 100. And we have Australia and New Zealand. So it's it's a great business. I think one of the things we've done well is we've invested in a lot of tech systems. So we have we've been in the cloud since 2008.
Yeah, well.
So we were really early onto that. And again, I sort of stumbled across it and went, oh, that looks cool. And we were one of the first on an ERP system running the business.
Okay,
but before that, we were literally on manual sales sheets, that had to be sent in to be uploaded into MyOb and all this sort of thing. So so it's been interesting, and we've moved our web system multiple times. Like they're big changes in a business like ours, and actually at the size we are now, it's even harder to change. Like they're big critical changes. So
absolutely.
It's interesting. In the early days, I'd go, I think that's a good idea, and I'd just go for it. Whereas now it's a very considered decision.
Oh, 100%. We work in change management, right? So if you ever need us, give us a call.
Thank you.
Sales plug on the show, live
perfect.
on the show. There you go. No, but I think you're right. It's about understanding and enabling that change. Because everyone's got to understand why it's happening.
Yeah.
What's the reason for it? What's wrong with the way we're doing it?
Yeah.
And where are we trying to go?
Yeah.
That this change is actually required. So
Yes.
once you get all that in place and you what are we doing and what are we actually not doing
Yes.
is probably one of the most critical questions that you can ask in that phase.
Yeah, and I would say, from my learning of putting those systems in, the earlier you do it in your business growth and put the right systems in, the better, because one of the things we've struggled with is our inventory system, because over the time it's become more of a complex issue for us as our range has grown. And so we've put a new one in the last 12 months. It's been really hard because you're trying to put it in later. Like you've already got, we were moving from really complex Excel sheets into a system, and we're almost there. And I think we're about a month away from it actually working really, it's working, but we want to be able to actually use it really proactively.
And get the data and everything.
And my sister's really great with that stuff. So she's really good with systems and IT. So she does a little bit of that side of things much better than I do. So so there's always challenges, and I don't think someone once said to me, when you're in the startup phase, you have a lot of problems. When you're first starting out, it's a lot of issues you got to solve. when your business is more mature, you have less problems, but they're really complex. So and that's probably where your business comes in. It's the later stage when they're more complex. Like in the early stages, people can work it out themselves pretty much.
Yeah,
fly by the seat of their pants, work it out.
It's just an iterative process, right?
Yeah.
As long as you keep the people engaged along the way and keep them communicated as to what's actually happening and why, like you can pretty much get through most changes in that early stage.
Yeah.
We get involved in that real complex.
Yeah.
Where there's different business units, there's different type of key stakeholders, different wants, needs, desires.
Yeah.
People happy with the old legacy. Not to mention, you think about government where there's older people who are tenured employees.
I just can't even imagine.
It's a ecosystem, if anything, right?
It's a real challenge. I'm on the Premier's Women's Council here in South Australia, and it's really interesting observing how the processes work in government versus in private enterprise.
Yeah.
And it is really different. And I think I have a high respect level of how things happen in government because there's so many stakeholders and it's really the community at large you're making decisions for. So I see why things are more steady.
Yeah.
But equally, as a business owner, sometimes it's frustrating because you kind of go, well, why can't we just make this change because it's going to make a difference? But when you really start peeling back the layers, you realise why change is more considered in different environments. So, yeah.
It has to be. It has to be because you're dealing with different personalities with different perspectives, right? Like that's the different views on what work is. You mentioned earlier that your staff don't work as hard as the founder. Of course, the staff.
But you can't expect them to.
It doesn't. It just does not work that way, and the staff won't work as hard as the leader or the CEO or whatever. It's the same thing in those larger organisations. It's just the way.
Yeah.
It tends to work. Well, I'm thinking about someone who's looking. You started in 2005, around that time. It's now 2023. The e-commerce world
has changed a lot in that time.
The e-commerce world has changed a lot.
Yeah, massively.
What advice do you give? And I know you do a lot of mentoring and coaching with young entrepreneurs and leaders. What advice are you giving those now?
I think anyone that thinks going online is going to be easy needs to do some research. Like it was when I started. Going online was so easy. Like you didn't have to think about things too much. But
now there's a whole cyber stuff that comes into play as well.
Well, yeah, and it's really it's expensive too. Like it's not actually. Once upon a time, it was actually like I was saying, are we going to be a retail business or an online business? The way I could scale the business bootstrapped was online because it was low cost. Like the website was a much lower cost than lots of retail overheads. So, and also the complexity of not having lots of business partners. If I went down that franchisee, I had my first franchise inquiry 6 weeks after we opened the door from Tasmania.
Yeah, wow.
So it was like, and I was slammed with the franchise inquiries.
It's amazing at how quick these people are onto it.
Yeah, it was incredible. I think I had someone I worked with in London in Tassie that told a friend. Like I think that's how it came about. Yeah,
that's amazing.
Yeah, it was crazy. So, it was a really interesting concept, and but I think that the complexity of it's a really layered approach to online. Like you can have a website, but unless you can bring traffic to that website, there's no point having a website.
Yeah.
So you've really got to think.
Instagram's not enough, is it really?
No, it's not. And also now, all those channels, they expect you to pay. Like there's no such thing as a free lunch on those platforms. So you have to have a decent budget now to compete online, and then you have to be able to prove to Google that people are buying on your website and they're clicking around pages and that they are interested in your site. Because you get a high bounce rate, Google's going to say, oh, organically not interested in this. Like you have to tick a lot of boxes to do well online. So, and again, if you've got some of the things that work really well now, you have to be quite strategic about an online site. And where I've seen a new site do well is when they've had a really strong influencer with some kind of equity stake in a business. Like that can catapult a new site really well. Like there's some great strategies.
Oh yeah.
But
I've got one idea in my head floating around right now that I know I could turn it into an empire tomorrow, but who's got the time, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because of that influencer scenario.
Yeah. Yeah. And so there's lots of there are ways you can make it successful, but you have to be really thoughtful about it. You can't just chuck a website up and hope people are going to find it, because I don't know how many websites exist in the world. There's a lot.
There's a lot. So your advice would be, it's harder than you think.
Oh, no, my advice is probably more just really consider your approach to market. Like,
Yeah.
how are you going to get people, just like you would if you're opening a retail store, like how are you going to attract people to your store and what's your point of difference?
Yeah.
And be really clear about that, because if you get that right, then I think it works.
Yeah. But like, okay, let's do a scenario, right? I'm a young female, male, whatever. I'm a young human being, and I've come to you, and I've said, I really enjoy going to the gym. I want to start my own gym clothing label. What's your advice?
Gosh, there's a few of those.
That's what I'm saying, right? Like, because it seems to be like everyone wants to get into clothing or do something like that.
Yeah.
Just seems the obvious choice.
Yeah.
But there's just such a saturated market.
Yeah.
What do you say to someone who's like, but then you go, well, why can't I be the next Gymshark or Riderwear or whatever it is?
They totally can. They just need a point of difference. And Riderwear is a great example, actually, of how they had a point of difference.
Correct.
So they really focused on a particular niche within that fitness category to make them feel really special, and now they've broadened out. So I think if you look at any, and our business is the same, start in a niche. Start in a niche. Don't go mainstream. Don't think you're just going to have a generic gym wear label.
Yeah.
Like, if you find a niche and there's a new type of fitness that needs something a bit special, you know, that's the way to start it.
Really.
Like, do that. But and then, get the right advocates behind your brand, influencers, people who are great in the industry. And you could do really well, but you've got to have a point of difference. And that's that niche approach, I think. So we started really niche. So Edible Blooms we created our own category. Like, literally, if you want to buy an edible bouquet, the most searched terms on Google's Edible Blooms.
Yeah.
Like, our brand name is the keyword. Like, we own that category, like the Hoover of
it's
our
like
niche.
like Stanley knife, right?
Yeah. And I've had heaps of people copy us over the years, but no one's lasted because we've had this brand position in our category. And in fact, Edible Blooms is one of the most searched keywords in the gifting category online now in Australia. So
is there anyone doing it over in the US and that sort of stuff? Or?
There's similar things. Nothing exactly the same, but they're similar. Yeah. And
why wouldn't you tap into that market? 300 million people.
Yeah, I know. Well, look, we did have an attempt in the UK market recently, and we actually did that as a test because we really wanted to go into the US market. We felt like we had a really great product for that market, and we thought we'd practice in the UK. And we ended up burning so much cash in the UK testing that we've paused that for a little while, and we'll reset. Honestly, we still see so much growth in the Australian market. We've actually got so much to grow here. And one of the things I'm a big fan of is distribution. So to be honest, I'm more interested in a market where we could find a partner in a US who already had a distribution channel that could take our unique product and distribute it through their channels. To me,
you're open to that.
That actually would be a much better way for us to go to market faster.
Well, it makes sense.
Than for us to try and build a brand, build everything.
What about
else.
Acquiring a company over there?
Yeah, I guess so. I hadn't even thought about that. Yeah. That's like way too big for me. But yeah, look, I think that's the thing. I think once upon a time, the way you would go to a new market is what we did in the UK. You go, well, we're going to build our own brand. We're going to build our own distribution. It's a really expensive way to go into market. Whereas if you can partner, and I think this is what we're seeing now with business, is people are saying, well, who can I partner with?
Yeah.
Who can I collab with? How can we work together to take advantage of my intellectual property, your distribution? So that's that's probably what I would be from our learnings from and I think you win or you learn from any situation. And from going to the UK, that was my big learn was, well, actually, we don't need to do everything. We don't need to recreate exactly what we've got in Australia.
Yep.
We could actually be really successful in another market through partnership.
Yeah.
So
makes sense.
Yeah. So I'm not in a hurry. Actually, honestly, I see so much growth for our business in Australia that when that right opportunity comes along, it'll come along. I do believe in those things. The door's open when you need it to. So
yeah. Oh, without doubt. So to grow and scale a team, what I know to be true is you need a quality team around you.
Oh, yes.
What lessons have you learned around building that team over your years?
Gosh, lots of lessons. Look, you don't always get it right, and that's okay.
I know that.
That's totally okay. Anyone that tells you that they're really good at choosing the right person every time in an interview, they're telling you a fib. But you know what? From every person that's joined our business, even if it hasn't worked out, we've all learned. Like we've all, the next person you hire, you get it a bit better. Like you do improve as you go. And some people who are right for your business at a certain point aren't right for your business forever as well. And that's also okay.
Yeah.
So I think the big thing is not taking it too personally when someone wants to move on, because I do. I'm like, you don't like me anymore, you know? And I do, like, it's that thing of taking it so personally. But in actual fact, everyone's got to grow. And as long as when someone's worked for you, they walk away learning, like they've learned a lot and that's taken them to the next thing.
Yeah.
Like, I'm so proud of my team when I see them doing well in their new roles. Like, I think it's awesome. Like, and especially when they go from strength to strength, and I think, God, that's awesome. That's exactly what they're meant to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, having a good team around you is really important. I think what's really nice is that I've got a lot of my team who've been with me for a long time. So my sister Abby's obviously been with me for 17 years. So is Sarah, our business partner. So there's the three of us that have been there pretty much from that first year, which is amazing. And, we've got a lot of other team. We've got 11 years, 8 years. Like, we've got a lot of people who've been with us a long time. So we're really grateful for that. And I feel like we've got a really loyal core team, which is great. So
I want to touch on the not being liked thing.
yeah, it's hard, isn't it?
It's horrible.
Yeah.
I hate it. It is actually something that's I've really struggled with, to the point where I almost can come across inauthentic sometimes, because I'm just trying to just keep the relationship floating. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I don't want you to hate me, so I'm just going to be nice. But really, like, I don't have time for you. Like, do you know what I mean? Is that something that you feel that's held you back? Because there's a part of me, like, when I meet someone, I'm a people collector. Right?
Yes.
This is why I started the podcast. I like collecting people, I like having and learning and growing and surrounding myself with like-minded people who are trying to achieve something in this world. So, but there are also people who are like energy vampires, right?
Totally.
They suck that energy out of you. And even with those people, I still have that desire to be liked.
Yeah.
And I don't know why.
Yeah. It's really interesting. I got some really good advice, because I love people as well. Like, I get energized when I'm surrounded by people. Some people actually need to retreat and have their own energy to themselves. I'm not
introvert, extrovert. Yep.
Yeah, I definitely get energy from being around people. But I remember I had this is a girl that I was at boarding school with, and I was at early days in working for the big legal firm, and one of the junior partners, I was really struggling with this friendship, and she gave me the best advice ever. She said to me, Kelly, I got this advice and I'm going to give it to you. She said, you don't get to choose your family, but you do get to choose your friends. You choose. Just because they've been around you, like you've had this shared experience earlier in your life, it doesn't mean you have to be friends with them forever. And this was someone who'd crossed the line and done the wrong thing by me, but I was really torn, because I was like, but I've been friends with her forever.
Yeah, what about all that? Those
years? Yeah. And so I really do try to be a kind person, but I just stepped back. So I stopped actively reaching out and just tried to retreat. And honestly, it was the best thing I ever did. And it is that thing around, when you look at any person that's successful, they surround themselves with great people. So you just got to make sure the people around you make you feel good, for me, I just encourage those friendships, and less available for people who aren't.
I agree. Yeah.
So it's and I think that's the lesson as you get older. And now I'm mid-40s. It's about learning to say yes and to say no, and knowing when to say no, and being okay with it. And you can say it in a really kind way, or you've got something else on or whatever. Like, I'm very much about kindness, but I am also making sure that I do have people around me that charge me up, not pull me down. And it's really important.
I had a meeting in the past week with someone, and they're very high up within an organisation. Just a lot of drama.
Oh God.
Around them.
I can't handle that.
Yeah. No, but not so much them. There's always drama around them, if that makes sense.
Yes, I'm always wary of that.
100%. So I think the conversation for me is not only you get to pick and choose your friends, but you actually get to pick and choose whether you're involved in the drama or not, right?
You do.
Step away.
Yeah.
You don't actually need to be in and amongst it. You have between stimulus and response, there's a choice, right?
Yeah.
There's that gap.
There totally is. And actually, just on surrounding yourself with good people as well is, I think, one of the best and most important decisions we all make in our life is who we choose for our life partner too. And I'm really grateful that I met my husband, and he's been a really great influence for me and helps me to say no to things as well, because I would just say yes to everyone all the time. But he is definitely my biggest cheer squad member, and I'm his, and we really do support each other, but we also call each other up when we need to as well. And I remember he said to me at one stage, because I was just saying yes, because when you're a female in business, one of the challenges that you have is there's less of you.
Yeah.
And so you get asked to do a lot of things. So whether it's the keynote or mentoring, I facilitate an entrepreneur group for Behind Closed Doors here in Adelaide, which I love doing. But he's really conscious with me about how many things I say yes to, and he put it into great perspective. And I've said this before, and people are quite shocked by it, but he said to me, and it's so true, he said, Kelly, when you say yes to everyone else, you're saying no to your children. And it is spot on.
100%.
And then when you put it in that context, it helps me to say no.
Yeah.
Because I know that when I'm saying no, I'm actually saying yes to my children.
Yeah.
So that's something that because
most people say yes because it's the fear of missing out, right? If I say no now, they're not going to ask me next time. I think what it actually does is quite the opposite.
Yeah,
it creates the scarcity around you, and because how do I get a hold of this person? How do I get more of them?
Yeah, true. But there's a scarcity around anyone from a diverse, whether that's being female or your ethnic background. There's a scarcity to you and what you have to choose. And when I facilitate my Behind Closed Doors groups, I say, we've got to say yes to things that make the biggest impact.
Yeah.
Because our role is to be role models, like we were talking about before. So I think just assessing how we can use our time most effectively is incredibly important.
So while we're on the subject of all the founder stuff and the female founder and being, you do a lot of mentoring in that space. Can you speak to the challenges that come with being a female founder? Because you mentor a lot of females in that space. Is it different to being a male founder, or is it?
I don't know.
Is that kind of what you? I'm trying to understand
really
why when you mentor, why are you only mentoring females, not just people who are looking to grow?
Yeah, I have mentored some young guys in business. Because their mums have asked me to.
Yeah.
So, if I think I can help someone, I'll give them the time. If I don't think I can help someone, that it's not me saying I don't want to help you. If I don't think I can actually is the right fit for me, I'll usually try and refer someone else that can, who's better positioned to do that. But I think the mentoring piece is incredibly important. And actually, I've had some great opportunities, and I learn a lot from mentoring.
Yeah,
I learn so much, and people think
you reinforce what you
people think the mentee's the one that learns everything, but actually, it's not. The mentor actually learns stacks from that engagement. And another kudos to my husband when I was mentoring a young woman in business a couple of years ago, and she was looking at investors, and they were male investors that were looking at the business, and I was mentoring her through that. And I just didn't really like the approach and, a couple of things. Anyway, I went home to my husband. I said to Andrew, look, I just love Alice. I think she's so bright. Her business is incredible. I wish I could invest in her business. He said, well, why don't we? And so that actually started my first I had invested previously in other businesses, but this was quite a significant one. So I've been able to be part of her journey, which is great. So, and it's worked really well being a female investor. So there's some really interesting statistics in the market around scarcity of funds for women. And it's not actually that there's a scarcity of funds. It's that it actually comes back to the exact same thing about you saying men are asking you for an interview, women are not. Women don't have the confidence to ask for the money like men. It's a really interesting thing. And so I have a group of other women in leadership. I'm actually catching up with them today, and we've called ourselves the Fearless Females. We've created a Facebook group. There's over 300 of us now on this Facebook page. We started a couple of months ago, and we're really wanting to use our collective power because we're all at an age and stage in our career where we really want to give back and help that next generation through.
So who's created that group?
Well, it started with a group of us having lunch, and we kind of really loved this special part of what we were doing, and we went, we should because people were asking to come to lunch with us.
Yeah.
And we actually went, no, you can't come to our lunch, but we can create some opportunities for everybody. Absolutely. So, because the magical thing about having a lunch group is we have a lunch group, there's 10 of us, and we actually do a proper round table. So we used to catch up and just have fun together, and we went, we should be using this for business because women, we need to actually support each other. Yeah. So we just had a simple thing where we have an ask and a give. Everyone at lunch has an ask and a give for the table. Yeah. And everyone learns heaps from each other. So everyone's going, that's so awesome. Yeah. And so it's just a really simple format. So we tell other people about what we do, and we're like, you start up another group, you know, like just have lunch, just chat, but just do an ask and a give rather than just chat, and it just makes it more.
Is there ever anyone, like, I said I'm a people collector, is there ever anyone that you go, I actually want them in this lunch, like I want to learn from them?
Totally. Yeah. So that's why we've grown Fearless Females now. So we had a networking catch up just before Christmas, and all these people came. We were like, oh my God, this is ridiculous. And people asked to sponsor it, and we were like, this is just like we're just getting all these women together for a drink, and then we had sponsors, and they were handing out all these gifts and all this stuff. Anyway, so we actually have our International Women's Day. We're doing an amazing event. We've got News Limited sponsoring it, Maz sponsoring it, Bespoke HR and Hugh Hamilton Wines. Yeah. And we've got a friend of mine, Mark Randolph, who co-founded Netflix, as our guest speaker, and he's here in Adelaide for South Start. So he's doing a fireside for us for women on International Women's Day, which is awesome. So it's really interesting. I think when you get good people together, I feel like I've digressed a lot from the original question here, but
I don't remember what the original question was.
I can't even remember either. But it's actually about surrounding yourself with good people. Yeah. Back to that original point we were chatting about, but it's about, I think we looked at each other and we said, well, what can we do to help others? And that's what I'm really excited about. And actually, the other thing I digressed from is that women are not getting enough funding in businesses. So Deloitte do an annual study, and 3% of funds went to female founders 2 years ago. Last year it was 1%. I think it's gone up to maybe 2%. But if you think about every dollar of capital that goes into a startup in Australia or a business that's growing in Australia, and that kind of percentage goes to female founded businesses, there's less female founded businesses to start with, but it's a disproportionate amount of money, and it's actually quite a problem to solve, and that's a problem I'm really interested in solving at the moment, and I think women have got to be part of the solution. I don't think we can wait for it to just naturally to be solved, and so with our group that's something we're trying to work out, and it's harder than I thought. I thought I can solve this, but my original idea was that we've got this group of 300 women. Imagine if we could all put in $1,000 a year each as a grant to businesses that are like female founder businesses that are actually going to grow and employ people. So these are like growth businesses, not a lot of female. There's startup, a lot of funds for social enterprise, but there's not for commercial enterprise. So I'm really interested in facilitating the growth of commercial enterprise, which I know sounds a little bit less kind, but it's actually what's going to employ our children. It's the thing that's going to create wealth and growth and excitement for Australia. So I really am quite passionate about it. But actually, to just do that collective, get women to pull our funds, and I actually think there's an opportunity for government to get involved. So we could be quite a force to give women that. And I don't want it to be an equity-based investment. I want it to be a grant. I want it to be a true hands up in those early stages for female founder businesses to get them to the capital stage. And
what qualifies as a female founder? Like,
I think it's generally more than 50% ownership.
So like Canva with Mel Perkins, is that not a female? Like
I don't know the shareholding. She wouldn't be 50%
No,
anymore.
I think she's about 30.
So she would be
at the start.
She's the leader.
She's the leader, yeah.
She's amazing.
But so is that not?
I've got a funny story about Mel Perkins too. Yeah, I'll share it later. It's fine.
Okay. So what? But is that not a female? Like, because I mean, this is Australia's unicorn, right?
Yeah. Oh, they're amazing.
Yeah. Is that not a female? Like, is that classified as a female? Oh, no, there's two other males. There's Cameron and I can't remember.
Her partner, Cameron's the other partner. Yeah.
Third, yeah.
But they've had so many rounds of investment now. They're just amazing.
Oh, yeah. So we've had Nikki Skevak on the show, who's the founder of Blackbird Venture
amazing.
Capitals.
Yeah.
And he's like one of the bigger
Yeah,
investors.
and they've been multiple rounds, I think.
Yeah.
They've actually participated in
Yeah,
multiple
yeah.
rounds. I think it's an incredible Australian success story. Yeah. But I think it's really hard because, just collecting that money, when I started looking at the legals and the accounting side of things, we have to be audited yearly. We have to do, and this is like a side, we're trying to do this as a side hustle to, so I'm still working through
So you're not
it.
allowed to give cash these days?
Well, you can, but it's just not as easy. I'm actually looking at some really innovative models at the moment. I'll fill you in later, and I'll have to
It's
come
a
back and tell you how it
Kickstarter
goes.
model, isn't it?
I think that's a model that I think could work.
Yeah.
Like it's almost like a crowdfunding type page where we could do it. Anyway, there is a way to solve this.
Yeah.
But it's that early stage that is the gap.
That's amazing. I hope it works. I think because how do we get that 2% up?
Yeah. Well, I think the thing is we need to get women from idea into actual commercial,
Yeah.
of a size where they can actually apply
Yeah.
for that funding. And there's a couple of things that are challenging, and one is the confidence of women, so actually asking in the first instance.
Yeah.
And also if you read the white papers from Boston Consulting Group, and I think Bain & Co have done one as well, they say that women are the better bet because when a woman's pitching her business, she's going to tell you she's going to 4x it and this is what it's going to do. A male would come up and say, I'm going to 10x it. And then the woman actually delivers the 4. The male delivers a 7, but it's taken so much money, the return on equity is so low that the female's actually getting a better return on the dollar.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting. A lot of the funds are looking for female founders now. Like it's
that idea I said I've got an idea. That idea is my wife's idea.
Yeah.
Right. But my wife's this is I think what's the best way to put it? She is comfortable with where we are at.
Yeah.
So she's like, I don't really need to bust my ass. I got this idea. It's amazing. And we've got the influencers line. We got everything.
Yeah.
If we wanted to pull the trigger, we could. Laura's just kind of like.
Why doesn't she find a business partner to do it with?
Well, because she goes, I got Dan. Dan knows business. Like, he knows, why would I go anywhere else when I've got Daniel there who knows how to do it? So it's the motivation now.
Yeah.
Because I sit there and I'm like, oh my God, whatever you need.
You actually have to be hungry to do it.
Yeah, and I think that's the point. So this idea, which I think is gold, is sitting on the shelf.
Yeah.
And it's driving me.
Oh, I'm fascinated. I need to know what it is now.
I'm not. But it is relying on the influencer. It is relying on that. But it's more the fact that what I think where my point is getting to is that I think that there is this. The world we still live in is that it's kind of like what my wife's got kids, she's got family stuff there's all this other stuff in her head that she feels like that she needs to do first.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to flip the switch for her and say, no, get out there. But I can't push too hard because then do you know what I mean?
If she's not hungry for it, it won't work.
I know.
Yeah, it's a tricky one actually. Yeah. If you could find someone to partner with her, that'd be excellent. Like if you could find someone that would be the enabler.
Yeah.
That might be the way to do that.
Yeah, I think it's more the fact that she's like, we can't afford her to leave her job to go and start this right now. I'd love to just go, cool, no worries. But, you live a certain lifestyle and you have to keep maintaining your consulting, right?
Yeah,
100%.
All those things going on.
Yeah. Interesting. I just think that's an element of, there's a big part of that in this community is that the female
will often take the back step for the kids.
Take the back step, yeah.
But I think that's
and I'm not condoning that. I'm saying that needs to change.
Well, it does. Like being on the Premier's Women's Council, it's something that we talk about quite a lot. And when you look at success stories globally, you really have to look to Denmark and those sorts of countries.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting because I've spent a bit of time there. I've got some friends from Denmark, and the difference is the cultural expectation is when you have children in those countries that both parents take a step back. So there's better child support as well in place, but it's actually normal for both mum and dad after the child's arrived to go to 3 days a week each, and then or 4 days a week each. So both careers. And so then if you think about everybody across all industries, if it was normal for everyone to go to, say, 4 days a week, when you have children, no one would get that drop back. So women, because a woman takes most of that burden typically in Australia, it means that meanwhile her counterparts are moving forward while she's out of the...
Yeah.
And it's usually, if you're having a few children, it's not just 1 or 2 years, it's quite a period.
Yeah.
So it actually requires quite a cultural shift. And also I think it really requires men to feel really comfortable. I think that's probably the biggest challenge is actually men wanting to be... So I think dads want to be really a big part of their children's, like shaping their children.
Yeah.
I know my husband, he's an incredible father and he spends a lot of time with our children. In actual fact, he probably does spend more time day to day with them than I do, because we've actually been living at Port Elliot for the last 12 years. I've only just moved to Adelaide this year. So I've been commuting up and back. So my days have been very long when I've been going to Adelaide, but then I have 2 days a week at home where I do drop off and pick up. So, but certainly if I didn't have such a supportive husband, I couldn't do what I do, and that's not common.
No.
But, you know, he should be celebrated for that.
This is actually a question of wanting to know the answer, right? Like, I don't know if is there a benefit for the mother to stay home with a newborn child for the first 12 months? Like, is that biologically a benefit?
I've got no idea.
Because that's kind of like I come from an Italian background, right? Yeah. So you can imagine the world that I live in. Yeah. And so it is very much as like, no, the mum has to do that. Like, that's the attitude.
It's a cultural piece.
It's a cultural thing.
Yeah.
So, but is it biologically correct? Like, that's...
Well, we look at Denmark. The kids are perfectly happy there.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Exactly.
But also I think that whole parental piece where, you know, dads take time out. Like, actually our banker at NAB, he's taken the parental leave for 3 months.
Oh, it's happening everywhere. Yeah, one of our
really
clients...
Cool.
It's,
I was like, that's awesome. I love that they support that. And so I think when people are celebrated for doing that by the community, then it becomes more and more normal. It's probably going to take us another generation to get there. But I really love that idea of both parents equally taking on the role.
Makes sense.
Because at the moment, you know, there's a lot of, you know, women are just better at organising households, like just full stop. Like, my husband's great at doing other things that I'm not good at. Like, so I think you both play to your strengths in a household. And so the things I do for my children are probably different to what he does, but we both have a really active role. So I don't know. I think we should all be challenging the status quo on how we do things.
I absolutely agree.
But it's you know, for both parents, it's hard having kids.
Well, it comes with a motivation as well of wanting to do it differently.
Yeah, and look, we were really lucky because we had a nanny when our children, by the time we got a second, we had a nanny Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, and she was like my wife, and I loved her, and she's gorgeous. So, and she was with us for many years. So that made a big difference to how we could run our house, because we have a busy life. My husband runs our farm. He works in our business. He's doing an amazing Indigenous project up in the Flinders at the moment. Like, we have a lot of moving pieces to our lives. And so, you know, if we didn't have family support and the ability to have extra support around us, you can't do that stuff.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Looking forward for Edible Blooms and just business in Australia, what concerns you and what excites you the most?
I think concerning is just the volatility of things in the world and how much things in other countries can impact what's happening in Australia. I was at an economic briefing last night, and you know, actually, it's really interesting. The opinion is that the Ukraine war is not going to, whether it continue, like, unless Russia do something really crazy, it's not actually going to have that much of an ongoing impact as it did. It did certainly originally, which I was surprised about, because I still think if only we could sort out Putin, I think things would be a little bit better in the world.
It takes one bullet, right? Like, I don't know.
I didn't say that, but I just feel that that probably concerns me the most is that, you know, the world is so interconnected now. There's less control over everything. So I think we're all at the mercy of things that we just can't, like, there's more macro stuff than there ever has been before. I guess from an exciting perspective in our business, what I'm really excited about for the year ahead is a project we've been working on for many years, but it's around sustainability. So we've been working on our product range. So now if you get one of our signature bouquets, You literally take the wraps off and it all goes, and you've eaten it, it goes in the domestic recycle bin. So we have we've partnered with some great South Australian businesses like Technoplas and the Detmold Group, who've helped us to achieve some really great innovation in that area. It's given us a lot of intellectual property. We've really moved everything in our product range so that it's
that's good, because there's a lot of plastic, right? Like
in gifting, there's a huge amount.
You have to, yeah.
We actually really do stand out now from our competitors because we've got so many runs on the board. I think we've got so much to do too. So, I really feel.
So you got to get it from the recycled bin into the green bin, right?
Yeah,
is the next step, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. So, but we've taken away like a lot of the plastics, a lot of the like all the foams that are traditionally used in floristry, which are really actually awful products. So like we don't use any of that stuff anymore. So like it's quite amazing. And but we've got more to do. Like we've got solar on our thing. My sister now drives an electric car. I will soon as well. Like we're just really conscious of when we make decisions in our business, we're making decisions around sustainability.
Agreed.
One of our team members has actually just decided to start doing a study in Tasmania on sustainable living. So I'm like, awesome. Anything you learn, bring it back. Yeah. So, and it's awesome. So we've got a really very much a green approach in our office, which is really good.
I love it. What does the future look like for Edible Blooms?
Oh, look, I think we've got a lot ahead of us. Certainly a lot of growth, which I'm pretty excited about. And
what's the goal? Where do you want to be in 5 years from an Edible Blooms?
Oh gosh, do I used to have I'm a Virgo. I'm a massive planner, and I used to do really really long plans. And coming out of the pandemic, I actually only plan 12 months in advance now because I just feel like everything, like I was saying, all those macros and things that can influence us.
And the world's changing so quickly.
So I don't have – what I do have is our broader vision and mission, which is really around being more than a gift. So ours is about being there to help people celebrate life's moments. So that's like the heart of what we do.
Yeah.
So every decision we make is around that. So where that takes us will be – and I honestly think we'll be impacted by lots of macro stuff that I have no awareness of. Like take COVID as an example, had no idea that was incredibly a big boost for our business, which I didn't expect. And so, so I just think we'll just keep true to what we do and see where the ride takes us.
You're very what's the word? It's controlled, for lack of a better word. Control. Like I'm a shiny ball person. See a shiny ball or object and chase after it and get distracted.
Oh, I'm good at the shiny objects too.
As well? Yeah. How do you stop yourself? That sounds like
my husband tells me I like too many of them. He goes, "Oh, you got onto another shiny object." I'm like, "Okay, no, I've got it." So I actually have consciously focused because I think it is really easy to get distracted otherwise.
It is because there's so much cool stuff.
So much, exactly.
Do you think you're doing too much? Like, you talked about the mentorship behind closed doors, the Fearless Women's, all the stuff that you are involved in. Do you think that is hindering your growth at Edible Blooms? Or because I often think like I get approached to go on boards and all the above, and then I just think if I'm going to commit more time, I don't have enough time now.
Yeah. We're all time poor, but there's also that piece that give a job to a busy person and they'll do it generally pretty efficiently.
Yeah, that's the other thing.
I'm one of the reasons I can do a lot is this is a funny joke with my husband and I. So he calls me Miss 90%. So whilst I'm a Virgo, I'm not actually like that perfect Virgo. So I've done 90%. Yeah, that is awesome. I've ticked all the boxes. Great. Next thing.
Yeah.
So whereas he's a perfectionist, like he's the 100% guy. Yeah. So that's why our house always looks so beautiful because he's like the 100% guy. And I'm like, yep, that's good. Okay, done.
And I get bored real quick.
So anyway, I was doing a talk a few years ago and I said to him, "Oh, do you mind if I talk about how you call me Miss 90%? Because you don't want to throw your husband under the bus and he goes, well, actually, I think that's a bit generous. I think you should say it's 50 because at that time I think I was probably smashing through too much stuff and, so I do probably take on a lot, but I love being busy. It's who I am. My nature is to be busy. And so, and I probably don't do everything as perfectly as I'd like to, but I get a lot done and I feel like I'm able to give a lot more. So yeah, I probably...
Is your role more delegating now though, or is it?
Yes and no. I still am really hands-on. You'll get me on the phones in our busy periods at Edible Blooms. You'll literally get me, Valentine's Day. I was there till 9 o'clock that night and back in at 4:30 the next morning, clearing out our customer service to make sure we got back to customers really quickly. Because that's just my thing. You've got to make sure. Because Valentine's Day, the number of parcels we have going out, there's always someone that kicks over the fence and the dog eats it.
What does it look like, the parcels?
There's thousands. Yeah. It's massive. So, and we had a record this year. It was our biggest ever Valentine's Day, which was epic.
Australia-wide?
Yeah, Australia-wide. New Zealand actually was a bit of a doozy though, because they had Cyclone Gabrielle. So that was a bit of a, it's tough because our New Zealand office were all prepped for it. And then this is the thing I said about macros. You can't control stuff that comes along.
Yeah.
And if that had happened to our business, it would have been pretty devastating because you work for, quite some time into these peak periods to get everything organised. And then if you don't get the sales, it's that's tough. So, anyhow, so our, I'm pretty hands-on when I need to be.
You seem like, I think what I'm hearing from you more than anything is that you're actually very content and happy with the current status of the way your life is running and the way business is going, which is really exciting. And
I'm really grateful actually.
Which is what the feeling that I'm getting sitting here in front of you. Entrepreneurship is a tough game, right?
Yep.
And we lose sight sometimes of the gratitude approach, and we lose. It can affect even just leadership in general, right? Leadership of business or even work in general. If you actually sit back and look back at it. If happiness was a concoction, right, and you were putting a whole bunch of different behaviours and ingredients into this one concoction, what would you say would be the critical three for you?
I think you can't be happy unless you're grateful. So I practice gratefulness quite unconsciously, but with my kids I do it as well. So every night when we go to bed we talk about what they're grateful for from the day, and that's sort of how they unwind for bed that night. And I try, if I'm having trouble sleeping, actually being grateful and expressing in your mind what you're grateful for from the day actually helps you sleep better. A friend of mine told me that, and I've practiced that.
Do you write it down or you just think?
It's in my head. Yeah. Nothing. I'm not. It's a lot of people journal. I'm not really into journaling, but I very, very much use that mindfulness. I also think if you have to be a cup half full person to be happy. If you're naturally someone who's a cup half empty, it's pretty hard to be happy because you're just always looking at what you haven't got, whereas if you've got your cup half full and you just sort of think, well, how lucky am I? And it sort of links back to that gratefulness piece, but you just naturally have to have that, approach to life, I guess. And I don't know whether you can change
when you talk about cup half full, are you saying, so I'm one of those people, I set a goal or I want to achieve something, and I'm an optimist, so I always think that I can hit that, right? And then I do, and then I'm like, all right, what's next? And then what's next? And what's next? Is that cup half full? What is that?
Yeah, I think it's a bit the cup half full to me is a bit of an attitude thing. It's a happy. You just allow yourself to be happy, because a lot of people don't allow themselves to be happy. I think they kind of go, I'm too
sure, I got too much on. I'm too important.
Oh God, that's the worst. I definitely think that that optimism that you talked about is also a really important part of happiness. It's because if you think you can do it, you do it. Whereas if you doubt yourself, it's much harder to kick the goal. Yeah. So I think they're probably. And the other thing we've talked about a lot in this conversation has been about surrounding yourself with great people too. If you're happy, generally it's because I've got amazing husband and kids and friends and family around me. I couldn't ask for more really. And like you said, if you lost it all tomorrow, home is where your family is, isn't it? So, that's what's ultimately the most important thing.
Yeah, I think it's critical. I categorically believe that the people that I surround myself with is the reason why my life is in the trajectory that it is.
Yeah.
But I made conscious effort to remove people from my life.
Yeah, I think that's a brave decision, and I think it would have made all the difference.
It has.
Yeah.
Without doubt.
Yeah.
And that comes back to what I said earlier, which is it's the family that projects their fear. They do it from a position of love,
They do. Yeah.
but it's that projection of fear that can hold you back.
Yeah, absolutely.
Rightio. Now we're going to round up with some quick fire questions.
All right, cool. Put me on the spot.
What are you reading right now?
So a book that my father-in-law put me onto, which I love, is called Red Notice by Bill Browder.
I reckon that's been recommended before.
It's excellent.
Yeah.
And it really explains a lot about the Russian oligarchs, actually. If you're
Yes.
interested in getting
Yeah.
into that, I'm a
Yeah.
massive reader. And I love this. There's 2 books in the series. I've read them both. And Bill Browder's a pretty amazing human, actually. So definitely worth the read.
Yep, that has been recommended before. What is a self-development book, or it could be a podcast, or anything that you feel that stands out from the crowd?
Actually, I was given this book for Christmas from one of my advisors. It's the 5 questions you should ask your business. And it's written by Peter Drucker. And best of all, it's a really small book, so it's super quick and easy. And actually, that's how I read that. And I went, okay, that's how we ran our strategic planning in January on reading the book. So, yeah, it was really good.
Peter Drucker is
he's pretty iconic.
Yeah.
But this is a nice, short piece.
Yeah.
It was good. Yeah.
Managing Oneself is also another
Okay, great.
I would recommend of his, which is small, quick
Yeah.
read. It's a Harvard Business Review article.
Yeah, cool.
But Managing Oneself
Okay.
is also another
I'll
great
write
one.
that down. Thank you.
Yeah. What's one lesson that's taking you the longest to learn?
That was learning to say no. It took me ages.
Have you learned it?
Look, I have my good days and my bad days. I'm not perfect, so I try.
Yeah, brilliant. If you could have coffee with one historical or current figure, who would it be?
So many people. I always think about who I'd love to have around my dinner table. I love entertaining. Do you know, I'd really love to have a conversation with the Queen. I think she saw so much in her lifetime, so many different prime ministers, changes in the world, her own family, and she was such a steady, calm influence on the world. I think we'll all realise in time how much her quiet leadership and steady leadership was quite important to the world. I'd love, that would be amazing. Imagine that.
Yeah, it is. My mind just went back. When I first started at a company, a government company many years ago, I remember in my first week there, I attended someone's 50th year, breakfast. He was there for 50 years.
Whoa, that is incredible.
And
imagine all the intrinsic knowledge that was stored in that brain.
100%. And the personalities that go with it. And so he got up and I'll never forget. And I think he's still there now, right? This was 10 years ago. So I remember him getting up in front of everyone and he said, he goes, when I first started 50 years ago, there was a lot of arseholes. And now 50 years later, there's still a lot of arseholes. The world doesn't change.
I love that.
Yeah, it's so brilliant. And I was just thinking of the Queen. She's been through so much.
She might say it a little bit differently, but she
say
might say something similar.
She would say it eloquently. But I would dare say that she would be like, people are the same, right? They're the same. That's kind of what I took away from that message.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
What's some of the best advice that you've ever received?
I think it would be the advice when we were sort of really questioning what to do with the UK office. It was, well, you win or you learn. So as long as you take away your learnings to win the next time, you've won.
Yeah.
You know, you should never feel like there's anything you've done is a failure as long as you've learned from it. So I think having that should give a lot of people peace if they make, especially business owners, if you're making a decision and you feel like you've failed at something, it's like, well, what did you really learn? Because actually you can take that learning and you can absolutely smash it out the park next time with that learning.
There is always silver lining. Always.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. What habit holds you back most?
Do you know, I'm going to say it's asking for things.
Yeah.
Because
as in the lack of habit?
Yeah, so I don't ask for help or I don't want to bother someone and ask for a favour.
Yeah.
And if I do, people will say yes, and you're like, wow, that was really easy, but I don't do it often enough.
Yeah.
And I'm also really careful about not using up favours for something. Like, you know, what someone goes,
credit,
you just got to make sure you use make things.
It needs to be big.
Yeah, you need to use things wisely. And but yeah, that whole piece of asking, and I think you just made that really clear with men coming to ask you things, but women don't. You know, like so. I think that's something that I think all women should do better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If a female comes and asks me, she generally does it through a PR company or something like that.
Yeah.
It's never direct.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah.
What's your biggest pet peeve? What pisses you off the most?
Do you know what? Is in my business, if anyone, I'll say, why are we doing it this way? If someone says, well, we've always done it this way,
Jesus,
I can't handle that.
I just heard fingernails on a blackboard then.
Exactly,
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's probably the thing.
Yeah.
And to be honest, everyone knows not to say that.
No.
And we also question things. But yeah, if anyone ever says that, in anywhere, it sort of, ugh.
If anyone ever says that, I would question their employment.
Yeah.
That's just my thing. If you could pay someone to do one of your chores, what would it be?
Oh, I'd love someone to do my hair every day.
Oh, yeah?
I hate all of that stuff. Anyway, and someone to work out what I've got to wear every day. That'd be really nice.
I reckon that's the biggest one.
Yeah.
So having someone
take away those decisions.
Yeah.
Actually, one advice I did get is the night before. I actually do try and put my clothes out the night before. I just get out the door faster, and then I have a lot of little hacks in my life that make my day more efficient. And one of them is always being kind to your tomorrow self. So, you know, what can I do for myself tomorrow that I can do now?
Oh, I love that.
And one of those is actually, because I just hate making the decisions. And you can stand, women are much worse than men at these things. We can stand in front of our wardrobes and going, what am I going to wear today? Especially when it's so hot like it is at the moment. It's a nightmare.
Oh.
So.
Yeah, we got a bit easier. Chinos and a shirt.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Pretty well, or a suit and a shirt, yeah. What's one word that you absolutely hate?
Well, I hate getting the word no.
Yeah, it's true.
Which is why you've got to be creative with the way you say it to somebody else.
Open-ended questions.
Yeah. Or I hate, the other word I hate is when someone says, I'm just really busy.
Yeah.
How have you been? Oh, busy.
Oh.
Like, I hate that.
Yeah, that's a pet peeve for me, I think.
Yeah.
I got a lot of pet peeves.
Yeah.
But that's one of them.
Yeah. Yeah, people go, I've been doing all these things. It's been really interesting.
Because busy to me is actually a word that it's not productive.
Yeah. And ultimately you choose.
Correct.
So if you choose to be busy, that's your choice because you're saying yes to everything and you're overloading yourself.
Yeah.
But busy can be a good thing. Like you can,
but how's the business going? Yeah, it's it's busy, yeah.
Yeah.
But how are you going? I'm busy.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
Are you productive?
Yeah. Exactly.
I always respond with that.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. If you're productive busy, then that's a good thing.
Exactly.
It's a bit of a strange question, and it can. I'm throwing it in there. These are new questions, by the way. What's the first thing you would do if you became invisible?
Sleep.
Yeah. So no one would notice.
Yeah, I know. I could just literally just lie back right here and have a really nice snooze, and I'd totally get away with it.
That's brilliant. I did not think I'd get that answer, but that is brilliant. What's the most useless talent?
That's a working mum for
you. It is, yeah. Actually, my wife says that to me this morning. I should need to sleep for a week with no one else around me.
Do you know, in the middle of the day, if you get like a little 10, 15-minute close your eyes, that is an incredible energy boost for the day.
Without doubt.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And visibility would help that.
Yeah.
And then no one would know.
And I can go, all right, I'm visible again. Yeah. Okay, hi everyone.
Is Kelly in her office? No, she's not in her office.
I'm supercharged.
What's the most useless talent that you have?
Oh, God. Useless talent. Sometimes I'd say it's because I'm a really good cook because then I end up cooking all the time. I don't know.
Melting moment.
Yeah, that's right. I don't know. I probably, it's so funny. I would say, I've got no idea. I don't even know what my talents are. Isn't that terrible? Can't
answer that one.
Total blank.
You may or may not have come prepared with a mum/dad joke. It's a shit joke, right?
Yeah.
What's your best shit joke?
I'll try this one. What did the ocean say to the beach?
What did the ocean say to the beach?
Nothing. It just
Oh, I
waved.
knew that was coming. That's horrible. I
It's
knew
terrible.
I knew something about wave here. Yeah.
We did a really for Father's Day last year. We had a competition of best dad jokes, and it was brilliant. Like the best,
so
like
good.
everyone just loved. Like on socials, it was excellent because everyone was just jumping in with their best. It was really cool. It was
That's
really
the
fun.
best.
Love a good
Beautiful.
dad joke.
Thank you so much for your time. Thank
Pleasure.
you. And just on behalf of everyone who's ever used Edible Blooms, thank you for
Thanks.
all the amazing work that you are doing, and the moments that you are creating in other people's lives. It's you should be really proud of yourself and the
Thank you.
team.
Thanks.
Where can we find you, and what's next for Kelly?
So best way to reach out is LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. And you'll always find me Edible Bloom somewhere, so you can always reach out there.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Wonderful. Thanks for having me.
No worries.
All right.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for listening to the podcast all. You can check out the show notes if there was anything of interest to you, and find out more about us at synergyiq.com.au. I am going to ask, though, if you did like the podcast, it would absolutely mean the world to me if you could subscribe, rate, and review. And if you didn't like it, that's all right too. There's no need to do anything. Take care, guys. All the best.